Athens bustled with activity. At the airport, travelers prepared for their journeys. Among them were the passengers of EgyptAir Flight 648, their destination, Cairo. Families bid farewell, their smiles bright against the backdrop of the gleaming aircraft. The Boeing 737, a symbol of modern travel, stood ready. Unbeknownst to those boarding, a dark plan was already in motion. Inside the cabin, a sense of normalcy prevailed. Passengers settled into their seats, anticipating arrival. Unseen, a threat gathered force. Among the passengers, 3 men harbored a deadly secret. They were members of the Abu Nidal Organization, a notorious terrorist group. Their mission to hijack Flight 648. Their leader, Omar Rezac, exuded an air of quiet menace. He concealed a pistol beneath his clothing, his movements calculated and cold. The plane lifted off, soaring into the azure sky. An hour into the flight, the tranquility was shattered. Rezac and his accomplices surged from their seats, brandishing weapons. Panic erupted as the hijackers stormed the cockpit, their shouts echoing through the cabin. The pilot, Captain Hijacking, found himself staring down the barrel of Rezac's gun. "Take us to Libya," Rezac demanded, his voice a chilling whisper. The plane, now a vessel of terror, veered off course. The air crackled with tension. Captain Galal, his hands trembling slightly on the controls, tried to reason with Rezac. "We don't have enough fuel for Libya," Galal explained, his voice strained but steady. "We'll have to land elsewhere to refuel," Rezac sneered, his eyes burning with fanaticism. "You will take us to Libya or you will die along with everyone on this plane," he hissed. "Do not test me." As the confrontation unfolded in the cockpit, terror reigned in the passenger cabin. The initial shock had given way to a chilling realization. They were trapped. Whispered prayers and stifled sobs filled the air. The hijackers, their faces hidden behind balaclavas, stalked the aisles. They barked orders at the terrified passengers. The air grew thick with the stench of fear. Captain Galal, desperate to find a solution, suggested an alternative. "Malta," he said, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "It's closer. We can refuel there and then continue to your destination." Rezac hesitated. His eyes narrowed in suspicion. He conferred briefly with his accomplices. Finally, he turned back to Galal. "Malta," Rezac repeated, his voice cold and calculating. The wheels of the hijacked Boeing 737 kissed the tarmac of Malta's Lucca airport. The screech of rubber against concrete now heralded a descent into a maelstrom of fear and uncertainty. Inside the plane, a palpable tension hung in the air. Passengers, their faces etched with anxiety, dared to hope that this unexpected landing might signal a reprieve. Little did they know that their ordeal was far from over. News of the hijacking spread like wildfire. As night fell, casting an eerie glow on the drama unfolding at Lucca Airport, the world watched with bated breath. Television screens flickered with images of the stranded plane. Inside the plane, time seemed to stretch, each tick of the clock a hammer blow to the nerves of the hostages. The hijackers, their patience wearing thin, paced the aisles like predators. Rezac, his voice amplified by a megaphone, barked out his demands. He wanted fuel, safe passage to Libya, and the release of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. His ultimatum echoed through the cabin. The Maltese government, caught between a rock and a hard place, engaged in a delicate dance of diplomacy. They knew that acceding to the hijackers' demands would be tantamount to surrendering their sovereignty. To demonstrate their resolve, the hijackers resorted to a brutal tactic. They began to single out hostages for execution. The first victim, an Israeli woman, was dragged from her seat and shot in cold blood. The world reacted with horror. This act of barbarity shattered any illusion of a peaceful resolution. The hijacking of EgyptAir Flight 648 had become a deadly game of chess. As dawn painted the Maltese sky in hues of rose and gold, a fragile hope emerged. Exhausted negotiators announced a breakthrough. The hijackers had agreed to release some of the hostages. The news, though tempered by the knowledge that many remained captive, offered a glimmer of light. One by one, women, children, and the elderly were ushered off the plane. Tears of relief streamed down their faces. But the release, a carefully orchestrated act of propaganda by the hijackers, did little to ease the tension. Rezac remained in control, his finger on the trigger of the crisis. Hours turned into days, and still the standoff at Lucca Airport dragged on. The world watched, a mixture of fascination and horror, as the drama unfolded. Negotiations sputtered and stalled. Inside the plane, the remaining hostages endured a living hell. Sleep was a luxury they could ill afford. Whispers of a possible rescue attempt by Egyptian special forces began to circulate. But such an operation, fraught with risk, could easily escalate the situation. The stakes were incredibly high, the margin for error razor thin. Unbeknownst to the hijackers, a clandestine operation was indeed taking shape. In the shadows, Egyptian commandos prepared for a daring raid. Their training was rigorous, their resolve steeled by the knowledge that failure was not an option. The decision to launch a rescue mission was not taken lightly. The risks were enormous, the potential for bloodshed all too real. The Egyptian government, determined to end the crisis, decided to roll the dice. As the sun began its final descent, the Egyptian commandos prepared to move. Their mission, to storm Flight 648 and end the hijackers' reign of terror. Under the cloak of the Maltese night, Operation Sphinx swung into action. A C-130 transport plane, its belly crammed with Egyptian commandos, touched down at Lucca Airport. The stakes were astronomical, the potential for catastrophic failure a constant spectre. The commandos, hand-picked for their skill and ruthlessness, moved with precision. Their leader, Colonel Nabil Shukri, briefed his men one last time. Their objective: breach the hijacked aircraft, neutralize the terrorists and secure the release of the hostages. As the commandos stealthily approached the stationary aircraft, the faint strains of Arabic music emanating from within the plane provided an eerie soundtrack. The hijackers, seemingly oblivious to the impending assault, had grown lax. The relative quiet of the night was shattered by a series of deafening explosions as the commandos blasted open several entry points into the aircraft. The element of surprise, crucial to their plan, had been achieved, but it would prove to be a fleeting advantage. Rezac, jolted from his complacency by the sudden eruption of violence, reacted with the ferocity of a cornered animal. His shouts, a mixture of Arabic curses and frantic orders to his men, echoed through the cabin. The interior of the once familiar Boeing 737 transformed into a nightmarish labyrinth of flashing muzzle fire, deafening explosions, and the gut-wrenching screams of terrified hostages. The Egyptians, their initial advantage eroded by the hijackers' desperate resistance, found themselves locked in a deadly close-quarters battle. Bullets ricocheted off the plane's interior, their deadly trajectories cutting down both combatants and innocent bystanders. The hostages, caught in the crossfire, huddled beneath their seats. In the chaotic melee, a stray bullet pierced a fuel line, instantly transforming the already volatile situation into a scene of unimaginable horror. A massive explosion ripped through the aircraft, engulfing the cabin in a raging inferno. The commandos, their mission now transformed into a desperate fight for survival, were forced to retreat. The flames, fueled by jet fuel and human despair, danced across the shattered remnants of EgyptAir Flight 648. The once proud symbol of modern aviation, now a twisted, smouldering hulk, served as a macabre testament to the savagery that had unfolded within its confines. Emergency crews, their faces grim beneath their helmets, moved through the wreckage. The hopeful cries of survivors, a counterpoint to the groans of the dying, echoed through the night. The silence, when it finally came, was almost as deafening as the explosions that had preceded it. The flames, their fury spent, had receded to flickering embers. The air, thick with smoke and the weight of unfathomable loss, was difficult to breathe. As dawn broke over the Mediterranean, casting a cold grey light on the aftermath, the true horror of the previous night revealed itself. The death toll, a macabre calculus of violence and miscalculation, climbed steadily with each passing hour. 58 souls, their hopes, dreams and futures extinguished in a flash of violence, perished aboard Flight 648. Some were victims of the hijackers' bullets, their lives brutally cut short by fanaticism. Others succumbed to the smoke and flames, their final moments a terrifying struggle for breath. The world reeled, united in grief and outrage, as the names and faces of the victims filled television screens and newspaper pages. Section 3. The long shadow of Flight 648. In the aftermath of the tragedy, questions lingered like smoke in the air, their answers elusive and painful. The haunting memories of that fateful day continued to cast a long shadow over the lives of those who survived and the families of those who did not. The botched rescue attempt, a testament to the perils of miscommunication and the fog of war, sparked heated debate and recriminations between the Egyptian and Maltese governments. Accusations flew back and forth, each side blaming the other for the tragic outcome, further complicating international relations. The hijackers, their reign of terror brought to a fiery end and achieved martyrdom, their names forever etched in the annals of infamy. Their actions, driven by a twisted ideology, left a scar on the collective consciousness of the world. Omar Razak, the mastermind behind the plot, survived the carnage, only to face trial and a life sentence behind bars. His trial was a media spectacle, drawing attention from around the globe as people sought to understand the mind behind the madness. But for the families of those lost aboard Flight 648, justice in its purest form remained agonizingly out of reach. Their grief was a constant companion, a reminder of the lives cut short and the dreams unfulfilled, the legacy of Egypt. Air Flight 648, a chilling reminder of the human cost of terrorism and the enduring power of grief, continues to resonate in the hearts and minds of those touched by the tragedy. Memorials and commemorations serve as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss. The event, a watershed moment in aviation history, forced a reassessment of security protocols and a renewed commitment to combating the scourge of terrorism on a global scale. It led to significant changes in how nations approached aviation security, ensuring that such a tragedy would never happen again. Section 1. A legacy of loss, a catalyst for change. The ashes of EgyptAir Flight 648 had barely settled before the world grappled with the incident's profound implications. The tragedy, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of commercial aviation to the insidious reach of terrorism, spurred a global reckoning, forcing nations to confront the chilling realities of a new era of violence. Out of the ashes of Flight 648 rose a phoenix of international cooperation. Governments, once divided by political and ideological differences, found common ground in the shared goal of ensuring the safety of their citizens. Security protocols at airports worldwide underwent a radical transformation. The once routine act of passing through airport security took on a new gravity with increased scrutiny, enhanced screening technologies, and a heightened awareness of potential threats. Passengers, once accustomed to a more relaxed travel experience, now faced rigorous checks and balances designed to thwart any potential danger. The tragedy also exposed a critical need for greater intelligence sharing and coordination among nations. Intelligence agencies, which had previously operated in silos, began to collaborate more closely, sharing vital information that could prevent future attacks. The ghosts of the victims of Flight 648 haunted the halls of power, urging governments to cast aside their political differences and work together to prevent similar atrocities from staining the skies again. This newfound unity among nations marked a significant shift in global security dynamics. The legacy of Flight 648, though born from tragedy, became a catalyst for change, driving a collective effort to create a safer world for all. Section 2. The Enduring Echoes of Terror. Remembering Flight 648. 30 years have passed since the horrors of that fateful November night, yet the echoes of EgyptAir Flight 648 continue to reverberate through the corridors of time. The memories of that tragic event are etched deeply into the hearts and minds of those who lived through it, and the stories of that night are passed down through generations, ensuring that the lessons learned are never forgotten. The event, forever seared into the collective memory of a generation, serves as a solemn reminder of the human cost of hatred and the fragility of peace. It stands as a stark illustration of how quickly lives can be shattered and how the ripples of such a tragedy can extend far beyond the immediate aftermath, affecting countless lives in ways that are both seen and unseen. For the families and loved ones of those lost, the passage of time has done little to dull the pain of their loss. Each anniversary brings a fresh wave of grief, a reminder of the empty seats at family gatherings and the milestones that will never be celebrated. Their sorrow is a poignant reminder of the enduring impact of such a catastrophic event. Their lives, forever altered by the events of that day, are a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable tragedy. The resilience they have shown in rebuilding their lives and finding ways to honor the memories of their loved ones speaks volumes about the power of human endurance and the capacity for hope, even in the darkest of times. They bear the weight of their grief with quiet dignity, their memories a constant source of both pain and inspiration. The stories they share, the memorials they visit, and the moments of silence they observe all serve to keep the memory of Flight 648 alive, ensuring that the lessons of that night are never forgotten. The story of EgyptAir Flight 648 is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that the world is not immune to the dark forces of extremism and violence. It underscores the importance of vigilance, the need for continued efforts to ensure the safety and security of all who travel, and the necessity of addressing the root causes of such acts of terror. It is a story of loss, of courage, and of the enduring human spirit. The bravery shown by those on board, the compassion of the first responders, and the solidarity of the global community in the wake of the tragedy all highlight the best of humanity in the face of the worst circumstances. It is a story that must never be forgotten, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past and allow the skies to be stained once more by the blood of innocence. By remembering Flight 648, we honor those who were lost and reaffirm our commitment to a safer, more peaceful world.